Hello, everyone, and hello, my friends. I hope everyone's doing okay. I hope everyone's doing great. And welcome to this new episode of Learning from the Masters, where today we are going to take things a little bit differently. We're not going to just study one artist, we are going to see many artists. And we are going to focus today on drapery and clothing. So this is kind of the continuation of the last stream where I actually painted clothing on my figure right here. As you can see, I kind of changed the color, make it a little bit more purple. I don't know how it looks in the small camera, but yeah. So it's going to be a continuation, and we're going to see what we can learn from various artists. So it's going to be a lot of fun. If you haven't seen the previous stream, which is the like part one, it's on my channel. You can check out my channel and see the replay of this. And so because today we're not focusing on one artist in particular, feel free to just do as I do. Go on the Google Arts and Culture website and type any name you're interested in and check out for yourself. There's tons of work. You can zoom in closely. That's awesome. And leave me suggestions about artists that you'd like to see. We're not going to go too much in depth. We're going to have a little florilège of everything possible in terms of painting, drapery, and clothing, and all the various effects you can get. So it's going to be quite interesting, I think. And you guys can interact and suggest whoever you want to see. All right, so let me just check a few things. Okay, so put this here, and let me just say hello to everyone. Hello Zain, hello Peter, hello Shivam, hello Asia and Maya. It's been a while. How is everyone doing? All right, so let's start with a drawing first. And so this is a study of an apostle by Bernardino Gatti. Well, this episode is going to be a way to see some artists that we're not going to probably talk a lot about in the future episodes. So if you guys want to suggest, so you can see it's clearly a drawing that was made in preparation for a painting. You can see the grid as well. Kind of a, well, okay, I guess it's not really that important. It's not straight, but so you see the point. This is drawing, and generally they painted the highlights in gouache, drawing with black chalks, and you can see the cross-hatching action right there and the highlights. So you often see during the Renaissance, you often see some things to figure out right here. This is the point, to figure out things. So a thing you'll often see in the Renaissance is these highlights like painted over with gouache, which helped them figure out how the lights would work. It's a kind of important step. And why is like drapery a thing even in painting? You could say, it's just drapery, it's just fabric, it's just whatever. Like they could like draw trees, and how does it matter? And what is so attractive? Because you can ask many people, there is something attractive in drapery, and you'd say, well, what is so attractive? What's with drapery that's so impressive to most people? Why would people just look at some fabric like drawn or painted over and say, oh, that's great, that's amazing? Why would people say it's amazing? It's just like would you say this is amazing? This? No, not really. Like, it's just meh. It's just like clothes. But I think the thing is that drapery, especially at a time when nudity was not that it was accepted, but it was recodified. So drapery is a way to sort of display the body, but still cover it. Like, you have to, like, if you want to paint a body, a human body for a church, you're not gonna necessarily you have to cover most of the parts of the body, but you still want to make it interesting. You still want to make it dynamic, because like boring clothing, it's kind of okay, yeah, but like with drapery, you can really turn things around and really create some cool movement. You can be creative, just like you would with a nude figure, like with all the muscles, the tension, the folds, the shadows and stuff. But if you cannot paint a nude, you have to cover the bodies. And if you cover the bodies, well, you're looking for ways to still have fun while you paint and still have an expressive look. Like, you cannot display naked people for a painting on an altar for a church. So, well, okay, if I cannot do that, then I'm going to find a creative way to draw and paint drapery, which is kind of the point, like bringing dynamic poses and kind of displaying the body and being a sort of a complement to the body, because you can still see clearly that you can still see the body interacting with the drapery. You can see all the shapes. Everything is still there, and that's the interaction between body and drapery that's really fun and really interesting. And I think this is what is kind of an impressive thing about drapery, and that's always attractive in some way. And this is why we could still look at these old church drawings and say, oh, this was nice, this was cool and all. All right, who didn't I say hello to? Adrian, hello. Carrie, Paola, and Mike. Carrie. I got crazy about Van Eyck's fabric textures, velvet. Okay, let's do that, because this is the next one that I had. No, this is Van Dyck. Sorry, I was confused, but still amazing fabric and texture, and you have all the demonstration. Almost feels that, I mean, this painting is so full of awesome drapery that actually the background is kind of too much. Like, it's almost like you would just want, maybe it's because we are focusing on drapery, but it almost feels like you would just want the drapery and these nice little kids, like with all sorts of textures and various folds and awesome rendition of light hitting the surface of these clothes. Really is amazing. Alright, so let's have a look. Hello G2, salut Amélie. Hello José, Yann. Alright, so everyone's doing is doing fine apparently. Yeah, but Michelangelo didn't need that. He was that I don't know. But it's true, like Michelangelo never had to really cover that much. But he was one of a kind in a way. Most artists had to respect some codes still. All right, so let's talk about Van Dyck. So, well, you have everything. You have silk. You have kind of velvet, I think, in the background. And you also have fur with this nice dog. It looks really sweet. So it's almost like the drapery and the clothing is as much part of the subject as the actual kids, which was often the case. Like most rich commissioners would have the most elegant clothes and ask the artist to paint them really well. This was the point, like to display the wealth. I mean, really cool. So how do you make a difference between various textures with draperies? It's just about, like I said, it's just about values, like highlights. Like you have very strong highlights right here. And in something less less reflective, like, I mean, for instance, this, you can see that the highlights are a lot less shiny. So there's much more white in there to create some specular reflection, which kind of says that this is probably silk or something very shiny with a lot of surface reflection. So it's just as simple as this. It's observing well, and well, an artist like Van Dyck makes it look that simple. It's not, and also like this, like painting white is not as easy as you think. You'd say, oh, what is easier, painting red like this or painting white? Well, in my opinion, it's still easier to paint red, because the white you can easily have it wrong and make it look like the light in the room is off. It's kind of hard to master and to keep this white under control. So let's see some, like, you have some great examples here of like the various folds. I mean, this shape is awesome. So you have a plan right here. It could go this way. So here you have a kind of a fold. So it's you have to understand how it works. Like, especially you have to visualize it in 3D. But it's really cool. There's lots to learn just looking at this. The glazing of the clothes is made with linseed oil, I suppose. I suppose it's made with whatever he used as a medium, but probably linseed oil, yeah. There's a bit of leather texture on the dog's collar. Well, I'm going to have a look. The girl's curly hair was painted very well. All right, so like you have to visually like think 3D in a way. Like so this is facing the light like this. So if the light comes from here, it's facing the light this way, this part right here where my mouth is. And this part right here is not facing the light. So when the light hits, it's not hitting directly, or the angle makes it feel darker. And this receives no light at all, so it's completely in the shadows. And a really great example as well as how to paint drapery and fabric and clothing and still display the body is how this leg recedes in the background. And it's just, you still have the same kind of constructions, but everything is pushed in the shadow, so it makes it really feel that the leg is behind. So it works really well, really cool. All right, let me just check a few things. And let me check what you guys are saying. What a timing! I just started studying one of Leonardo's drapery drawing, and it's awesome. They're really one of the best examples, I think, of what can be achieved. So leather right here, yeah, and even like rusted iron, probably, I don't know. Really cool. And this lace is amazing as well. That's really cool that you see how to master texture is don't overdo it. And you have a perfect example right here, as the artist has left the texture right there. It's not important to have texture all over the place. You have to put the texture where the eye will fall. And generally the eye looks more within the lights and at the transition between lights and shadows. And whatever is in the shadows is you can push it off out of focus in a way. So just like the edge here is very soft, so you don't need to push the texture all the way back, and it still works. And you see how the texture plays around these shapes right here. You don't want to make it too much. You don't want to overdo the texture, or it's going to look very weird. But like doing lace like this is a very tricky thing, and that's an awesome demonstration. Just like this here, the texture in the red blouse is, or red coat or whatever, I don't know how it's called, jacket. It's not overdone, so it's the same type of color. This way it kind of feels that everything is is natural, doesn't pop out too much, just the right amount. Just like this texture right here, you don't necessarily see or understand what it is, but still creates the visual impression that something is there, and that's enough. See the same thing with the lace texture here. How in the background you don't need to do it too much. There was really a fashion of these types of draperies at once, like these shiny, silky draperies. This artist have long posing models for this work? I don't think so. I think considering that this was children from the royalty, he mostly had a couple of sessions to just draw from their profiles, and then use mannequins with the clothing, most probably. Just I think I have seen this portrait in drawing, so if I remember right. Hello Esco Coco Beam. All right, so this is another technique, different technique. Portrait of the Countess of Tournon by Ingres, 1812. And we are going to see another effect of texture, which is velvet. And it's amazing as well how incredible it looks. I mean, you can really be super close and he still looks pretty much perfect. So for velvet, like if it was silk, like very shiny, you would have some strong cuts here between the highlights and the rest. So you'd have the highlights that would do something like this, and there would be a hard edge. Also, the folds would be cut a little bit more with sharp edges. And here, as you can see, everything is very soft. It goes like this. It's all very very soft, and the edges are soft, but still there's a high difference, like a high contrast between the lightest, which is here, lightest, and the darkest. But the transition is soft between the two. So it gives the impression that this is a different kind of texture. So if you want, I'm just going to show you the silk with reflective properties, like it's shiny, it's ching. And velvet, which is also reflective in a way, but it diffuses the light, so everything is more smoothened and the transition are smoothened. Also, you also create the impression of texture by controlling the edges. Velvet is more like it is thicker, like as a as a fabric it is thick. So you can see you have to show the thickness right here. You show around the edges. You see and you feel the thickness of this. Whereas if it was something a lot thinner, you wouldn't see that with a strong shadow here. See how it is thick? Also because it is so thick and heavy, the everything, like the folds, feel a lot more round in a way. But still, it's an amazing impression of texture right there. It's truly amazing. Everyone have the same hands shape, like in the kids. Yeah, for the kids, like most of the time you would just have the portraits done when they were there, and the rest you finish by yourself. You don't want to be bothered. Awesome dress. So is glazing the best method for drapery? No, not necessarily. Glazing is only useful if you need it, but like this, in my opinion, was painted probably, I don't know. Well, was doing a lot of grisaille, so he was doing glazing. I don't know how this was painted. What's more important for drapery is to understand values and really keep the values under control. And this veil is also quite something. So for this type of texture, what matters is to control the transparency. That's all you need. No, not all you need, because you also have the motifs in the texture, but if you want to give this impression, you have to control the texture. So you can paint the underpainting before, so you paint all these parts before, and you add this on top with transparent paint. But you still have to adapt to how the things underneath will look. I mean, this texture as well is awesome. I mean, everything is really, really cool in terms of texture. So you still have the skin, like giving a color underneath, and you have the texture over it. I mean, that's great control. And you have this as well. So, level of detail is absolutely astounding. So, I mean, that's pretty complex. I mean, for that you have to understand how it works. So you follow the if I had to do something like this, I would follow these lines to guide. When you have straight lines like these, they are a great help, because see, there's a fold right here, so it folds, and under the fold it goes something like this, for instance, I don't know, and it folds, like creates some sort of S shape, and when it comes back it goes again. So right here again there's this sort of S shape, maybe, or maybe more, maybe it goes even something like this. I don't know how the fold works, but you can basically make it reappear. Like you can make the line reappear wherever you want. And using this line, you would start, this is what I would do, at least if I had to do it. I would start with these lines and use them as a reference to recreate the rest. But still, it's a very, very tough thing to do, because you have to keep everything under control. Like, it's not just about painting the motifs and the texture. It's also about keeping it coherent with the values. So let's say the blue right here, like a blue-gray right here, has to be lighter than the one here, because this one is in the shadow and this one is in the light. Like the red here has to be lighter than the red here, because this one is in the shadow. I mean, even the wood texture is really, really, really well done. And you have an amazing example of sgraffito, which is super cool. You don't see it that much. Well, you don't see that many sgraffito, but right here it's using really well, like pick. You still see the glazing. It was fashionable at the time to keep it to have a very pale skin, so you would keep as much of the underpainting. Ingres was famous for doing very, very sophisticated and very finished looking grisailles. So the black and white underpainting was really well finished and well polished, and you could just apply thin skin colors on top of it and keep some parts grayish to give the impression that the skin is kind of pale. You can see here you have some gray, here you have some gray. But it's amazing texture. Let's have a look at, because some of you have requested Sargent, so let's have a look at a completely different way to paint fabric and see how it goes, how it would go. Let's take, which one could we take from Sargent? Because like it's like the complete opposite way. Maybe this one? I don't know. We'll have a look at several. So from here, it's all working perfectly and all, but this is where it's very different from Ingres, is that when you get closer, you don't see the, wow, you can go really close. You don't see the individual motifs anymore. you just see some random brushstrokes. So it's like the complete opposite style. So last time we had a talk about tight versus loose. So you have loose, and this is tight. Loose, tight. See, like there's no better demonstration of what is loose and what is tight. And still, the amazing thing about Sargent is that it works from the distance, and also it works from the distance, but it gives a more impressionistic. It's more about the feeling and the dynamic of the fabric, and not about the various individual like laces and things like this, as you can see with Comme, for instance, where the attention is focused on each individual thing, like ting, tack, poof, paff. Everything is so carefully done. And with painters like Sargent, it's more about bringing energy. Well, let's have a look at this. I mean, just suggesting jewelry. And if you can see that, that's suggesting. So when you're here, you could say, well, that's a Jackson Pollock. Well, Jackson Pollock did not invent anything that Sargent didn't know. Sorry, he knew everything about this type of using blobs of paint, and just using the mark, the basic mark. Well, but we're not talking about jewelry. So see, everything is just suggested. The pearls are just barely suggested. Even he never hesitated to, like, see, he wants to remove the individuality of each pearl. I don't know if the last one from Ang, let me just did she have pearls? No, she didn't. But like, let's say jewelry, for instance. So each individual part is specifically designed, and you can understand how the thing here is locked into the ring, and how every part is designed. Well, right here it's a completely different thing. He wants to, with his brushstrokes, he wants to remove as much of the individuality of each pearl to bring the visual impression. So if you look back, see, it works because it gives the idea that they are on top of each other. And maybe he felt that this was too pointy. This was feeling too pointy, like his pearls, and if each individual point was separate here, maybe it could feel very artificial. Also, look at what we've talked about regarding the texture and the shadows. You don't need textures in the shadows. The shadows can deal with them. The shadows can be left alone. You don't need to be descriptive about what's happening in the shadows. That's one thing that you can keep in mind. Salut, je colle. Sargent is one of my favorite artists. Incredible impression it gets down. Impasto at its best, and suggestion, not detail. Exactly. Exactly. But it's amazing because when you try to do it, it doesn't work. Whereas you can still always try to achieve something like this, and with a lot of hard work, you'll probably get there. But if you don't have the right mindset, I mean, it's almost impossible to do something like this. It's amazing. Let's have a look at another Sargent just to be clear, but we already talked about him, so let's take something more sober. Portrait of Edwin Booth. So what you can see with Sargent, that's a great thing, is how the edges separating the figures from the background are softened so that it does not create a sharp edge, a sharp silhouette. And the rest is just suggestion, but it still works pretty well, and as long as the values are right, just they will naturally create a visual effect of the form of the drapery. So it's what matters. Hello, Dalal. One is reproducing life, the other is reproducing highlights and shadows. The eye will understand them the same, I think. Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, and also, like, there was a time when it was like Ung was before Sargent, and people at the time of Ung were not ready to have a portrait painted like this. People were not ready for to pay for a painting where their pretty dresses are just random blobs of paint. They wanted to have, before the Impressionists, before this time, before the invention of photography, people wanted this. They wanted to be able to get as close as possible and see how, oh yeah, it's awesome. You can really be very, very close, and it looks better than nature, better than real. And it took some time, it took some years for people to understand the point of painting a drapery like this. People were not ready at the time of Ung. Not really. Even with the Romantist, it was not yet something that you could do as freely if you wanted to have lots of commissions, at least. Really cool how the golden furniture here is painted. But again, this is an example, but I think it's, like, for me, it's a little bit too smoky in a way. Like, this is probably what I would call too much Sargent for my personal liking. but I understand how people can really appreciate this this type of approach, as it feels very dynamic, very free, very bold, and very feels like paint. So is the yellow a scumble over the furniture? Yeah, I think you can clearly see that there is a... So, I don't know, maybe there was first the brown... this brown layer, and then with a brush full of paint, like boom, and maybe with the same brush, just turning it on the side, like to have the thinner part of the brush, like boom. It's probably with the same brush or another brush, just like one big pass, and boom, goes like this. All right, so seems Sargent get the portrait down and then the clothes and everything else. I don't know. I don't know too much about Sargent techniques. All right, so what else do we have? What else? Do you have any suggestions? Because I have people, like I have some paintings that I picked. Vlaho Pukovac, La Grande Isa. So it's still classical. And I wanted to demonstrate how drapery was also used as a way to fill up backgrounds. So, like, you don't know what to put in the background, just put some various draperies, and you can play on the colors as well. So this is awesome. You don't have to use blue sky if you don't want to use blue. You don't have to use green trees, and just put some big drapery. Like anyone has this type of of big red curtain at home. But no, it doesn't matter. It's still it's a kind of a trick, an artist trick. Put a drapery in the background and have the color that you want. So actually just use drapery in any sort of way and fill your canvas with all the colors that you want. So you want some deep red, dark blue, and kind of green. Also want some yellow. Just put some various drapery. Put some fabric everywhere, and it's going to do whatever you want in the end. So you can have exactly the colors that you want. Well, nowadays, if you paint with this type of like trick, I think it would look kind of old-fashioned, though, because it's probably a little bit outdated to do that, like putting drapery in the background. Also, like even more, I would say even more old-fashioned is put some drapery like this, like the old Vermeer trick. Not just Vermeer did that, but that's even like more, I would say, outdated because it's been probably done. But still, it's a good trick. Still a good trick. And you have fur as well here. With this animal. So fur, the secret to fur is just like hair. Just have big brush, follow the movements, and have the various brush strokes blend naturally into each other. Who was the Green Velvet Dress artist? It was Ingres. Ingres. What about Henri Fuseli's The Nightmare? Alright, I'm gonna check it out. I don't know if it's there. There's The Nightmare. It's not really any drapery in there. And I can't find. I can find the painting you're talking about. What do you call that skin color? Ali Bassour. I once heard an artist say that variations of red, yellow, and blue cyan make any painting visually pleasing. Well, any variation of any color can make any painting pleasing. It's just about balance generally. It really depends. It really depends on what type of red, yellow, and blue. Red, yellow, and blue, or red, yellow, and blue cyan. No, I read cyan, but red, yellow, and blue. No, red, yellow, and blue is a very classical kind of classical. How to say? Oh yeah, The Nightmare. I see it. Sorry. There it is. Red, yellow, and blue is a very classical kind of color composition scheme. It works, but it's not. You have to balance. You have to tone down some of them and not have them all at the same level, or it's going to look very like classical Renaissance, like think Raffaello, for instance. It was really like strong blue, strong red, strong yellow, and you have and even sometimes strong green, and all kind of at the same level. So it's going to have this type of old Renaissance look in a way, so if it's what you're looking for. But that's how I see it. Otherwise, you have to, like, if you look at this, for instance, I mean, the black here is kind of blue. It's a very toned down blue. The red is very washed out, and the yellow is subtle. Like, it's not too much yellow. So drapery here is kind of a scenic part, in a way, that allows the elements from the nightmare to come out to haunt this poor lady. It's kind of the red is almost like acting as a sort of cloud surrounding her. Interesting. All right, so let's have a look at another one. So this is classically classical Renaissance. Classical Renaissance, drapery. I don't know why I selected these. Do you have any other suggestions? Can I talk a little bit about painting drapery that has a pattern on it? I talked about it in my last stream. Oh, let's look at this one. Talked about it in my previous stream while I was painting. So this is by this is by Titian. This is Magdalena. I don't have the title for you guys, but this is by Titian. So patterns. So it's pretty simple patterns, but I think it shows well how things are built. So whenever you have patterns, try to have patterns with at least one stripe, just like we said for this one. If you have patterns, try to have at least one line. It's much easier. See, this is one line, and all the rest, you can build the rest with these lines. It's much easier, unless you want to do something like Sargent and just draw some random shapes that in the end look good. But this is difficult. See, it's like motifs right here. Ah, okay. So lines are very helpful whenever you have patterns, because they help you follow the curves of the drapery. So you can follow the curves right here, this right here, and then this here, and you can isolate the different plans. You can isolate the various folds. So whenever you have to paint something with patterns, try to have some lines at least one line. Generally you have one line sometimes. And next thing to do is so prepare your colors and have one version of each color. So you have one light red for this part and one dark red for the part in the shadow, and you use your light red, and as it goes in the shadow, use your dark red. Same thing for the rest, actually, same thing. And trying to follow the shadows and yeah, that's about it. If you want to be very descriptive, though, if you want to be more spontaneous, just try to be very suggestive, like Sargent, for instance. That would be something else. So paintings like these. So in paintings like these, this is glazed, kind of. You have some glaze here that creates sort of transparency. You see how it's washed out like this, and how it's bluish. It's bluish because it's been applied over the area that was dried already. It wouldn't be that kind of bluish without this effect. It's been applied with glazes. You can clearly see how it stops here, and the hand was built before, and this veil was applied later. So thin glazes can work. They create generally things like this. So So this is another ingres. But this one was a study. So this shows you his way of working and preparing colors. This is just a study, guys, so... Or... No, is it a study? Yeah, it's a finished painting, but it's less less finished than the previous one. So this shows a little bit more the previous part before you do all the various refinements. Titian is more labor intensive. Yeah, Titian was lots and lots of layers, so I generally like to lay on one flat value and then glaze and scumble over this to model the form. Well, it's a good trick if you get what you want. Do you suggest a line under drawing for painting drapery, or perhaps a more detailed grisaille? I generally paint drapery directly with the local color. Sorry, unless I really need something strong. I mean, for this one, I don't know if you can see it. Let me check. For this one, I needed a very intense blue. So I did the underpainting. You don't see anything. All right. But the blue is very intense. Like from here, it's very eye-catching. I did the underpainting with blue, like the local color, and I glazed it with even more blue to create a kind of a strong blue, but that's it's pretty rare. I don't generally glaze a lot for drapery. I generally like to start with the local color and then add another layer to bring a little bit more punch. But generally, that's about it. Hi, Mac Collins. Every stroke Sargent did was calculated. Yep. And hello, Vox. Yeah, it was calculated. Like he was really taking his time before putting paint on the canvas. So it feels very spontaneous, but it's a lot of work, and this is why it feels so easy. It makes it feel so easy, but it's not. That's the trick. And let's talk a little bit about painting in sculpture, because we never talk about sculpture. Does anyone here does sculpture? It requires kind of a special setup. This one is The Religion by Innocenzo Spinazzi. Sorry for the Italian people listening to that, my butchering of your language. But so pretty cool figure where, I mean, it's if you think that suggesting fabric and drapery with paint is hard, think about how tough it is with rock. I mean, that really is something I find amazing, how it feels very light. So too bad that the nose got destroyed right here. So it was a sculpture made for a tomb, I think. Yes, I did sculptures. I love that painting of yours. Saw the video many months ago. Yeah, it's an old one. True. You did sculpture. I did a sculpture of a fish for lore once. Wow, did it work? Because you have this famous story about Zeuxis, the Greek painter that was supposedly capable of painting grapes so perfectly that flies would just stick to the wall to eat the grapes that were just painted. And that's kind of what you're doing with sculpting fish for catching more fish, I guess. So pretty cool. So right here, I don't know about the technique and all, so I'm not going to talk about this technique. But still, it's very impressive. I really like it, and also gives an impression like you have to study what type of fabric you're talking about. This is clearly a very light veil like fabric that has this amount of wrinkles and folds, is generally something very light, and something very heavy, like let's say velvet like this, will have a lot less folds, and the folds will be thicker, like they'll be heavy, they'll be round. And with something like this, the folds are very straight, very sharp, and this makes the difference. That's how you get the textures, like having the right design for each type of fabric. It's really tough, but once you get how it works. So this is why my point is that painting or representing drapery in any sort of way is all about understanding how it works, like physically, how understanding the essence of this fabric, and try to from this understanding, replicate and represent whatever you want to paint or do, and not try to copy by eye, because like it's going to move, it's going to change, it's going to. But if you understand how it works, you understand that you're supposed to have sharp lines, you're supposed to have strong shadows, or you're supposed to have fat edges, you're supposed to have no specular reflection, for instance, you're supposed to have transparency. If you know that, and if you keep that in mind, all this information is going to help you build the drapery and create something, rather than trying to copy and mimic. Well, you want to mimic, but you want to mimic what you understand from the drapery and the physics of the fabric, and not just what comes to your eye. This is why painting and drawing drapery is not just like copying a picture. You have to feel and understand how it works. So this is why it's also why it's impressive in a way. Yeah, this is what's fun about drapery, is that you can convey all sorts of cool designs. I mean, nobody would wear something like this, because clearly you'd have to have a clamp or something like behind, like holding all this drapery like in the back. But if you just see this sculpture, you have an awesome movement. So it's really cool. You can create some wonderful things. That's also a very fun thing to do, is a setup for your drapery. Like you have, let's say you have a mannequin, you have whatever to hold the drapery for your reference. So just setting it up and putting the right folds at the right spot. It's very entertaining. It's very fun to do, because it's basically like you're trying to put everything together in a pleasant way. That's really fun. That's really fun. All right, is there another artist you want to see? Is there something you would like to see? I think I'm going to do a last one just for fun. So sculpture or painting? Let's see. Oh, beaucoup. Yeah, beaucoup could be an idea. Just looking at various. So this is just Google Arts and project for drapery. Not everything is about drapery though, but hello Khalid. Yeah, pretty much. The sculpture was trying to throw every type of fold and drape into this. Oh, look at this as well. Is it ivory? Yeah, it's ivory. I like how it kind of follows a natural curve right there. So Bouguereau, I was able to see one of his portraits up close. I'm surprised by how muted his colors seem. His technique seems like Sargent to be suggestive rather than exact. Suggestive, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's also idealized. More than suggestive, so idealized rather than realistic, if you want to say. In drapery. Oh, drapery. Okay, let's have a look. Let's have a look and find a an example of Drapery by beaucoup. So what could we have? Let's find. There's not lots of things here, and we already covered beaucoup. Lots of things, and we already talked about him, so don't want to. I really like the white, how the white is strong but not too strong and very well painted. Like you have gray, it's really well controlled. This type of gray, this is a gray that still makes the entire thing looks like a white, like a strong white. It's this gray is hard to find. It's not too cool, not too warm. You can see how the light bluish tone plays off the orange of the skin. Yeah, I agree on the central figure. Yeah, I agree that beaucoup had some quite muted color. It's too bad because sometimes like something to be a little bit stronger in color would push it out of the, I don't know, maybe you have to see it in real life. But I mean, sometimes, but it's not about Drapery and all. I'm just disappointed by this black forest. I don't know. I just think it feels sad. Beaucoup was capable of painting much lighter sceneries, especially for forests, which he painted a lot. I don't know, like this background feels just that everything is gray and sad. Maybe it was the point. There seems to be weight to the dress or thickness. Yeah, it's a more kind of rugged fabric. You see that from this part right here, where you see a strong edge, like between the. So you see the thickness of this skirt. So if you want to make it super light, you have almost no shadow, because it's almost like so thin. Almost no shadow where it touches, and here it is kind of thick. So you have like peasant clothes, I guess. So I think it's on purpose. His backgrounds always seem unfinished to me. Not unfinished, just it was a kind of a style to put everything dark in the background to bring more focus to the figures. I don't know, I just find it just sometimes feels like a sad day in the countryside. Like, sad fall day in the countryside, because the green is very, very washed out with yellow, which makes it feel a lot like it's the end of the summer. and he had some examples where there was much more light. Not this one. Like this one. This one is a lot. There's lots of promising things. Like he could make it so nice by just putting more light and less black. I mean, I call this black. It's not black. It's very, very dark green, but it's way too dark in my opinion. You could just, why don't you put some of these light rays here? That's the only thing I have to say about beaucoup, because everything is just so great, so perfect in every way, but it's just something, sometimes it just feels so nostalgic. Maybe that's the point, and maybe I'm the one not really understanding. So she's not lit by the same sun that's lighting the background here. It's not the same light source. So she's in another world, and this tree is keeping her away from this background. So it's very, very nice. But I just find something missing. Too bad, because like I don't know. Maybe it's just how you're supposed to look at it. Like you're supposed to be kind of nostalgic and sad and well, of course, overwork. With beaucoup, that's the entire thing. It's overworking, like lots of work. Still, I think that there could be something better than this dark greenery. Because not all the colors go well with dark green. This color goes well with dark green, but you have this kind of purple goes well with this green, but not this one and not this red, and not this one and not this blue, in my opinion. But well, not here for saying that. We were talking about drapery, so I'm moving away from my goals. I don't know this work. Les Pléiades by Eliu Vedder. Never saw this one. It's a print. Photo print with added gouache on paper. It's kind of unusual. I never saw this one. It's the first time I see it. Well, not that I saw all the pictures that I'm showing in this show, but it's the first time I see this artist, and it's the first time I see this type of thing. So I'm taking some time to take it all in. Kind of nothing to say really, I'm just trying to look. Sometimes looking is better than talking. Drapery seems to be a great tool to suggest movement here. Yeah, it's almost the entire subject, in fact. Sometimes I get overwhelmed with all the mastery before us. How can we ever... Vox. Look at Rembrandt's Drapery. Let's look at Rembrandt's Drapery. Oh. All right, so Rembrandt. What can we find? This could be fun. Oh, there was also this time for Rembrandt with all the people in black. Like wearing black. That's simplifying drapery. It's great. All these people were wearing black, so for the artist, it was probably a lot easier to paint. So you just have to paint the portraits. How easy. I would give a discount because you don't have to paint that much. Look at how easy. Boom, black. And it's not the artist's fault. The people are wearing this, so it's a lot less trouble to paint. Okay. That's Drapery by Mr. Rembrandt. Oh. Mr. Rembrandt was going... Is that there? Yeah, I think it is. He was being very sharp with his drapery right here. Working much in details. Yeah, it's very tight. I didn't expect that. I mean, Rembrandt was had many various styles. He was very experimental. Oh, there's some nice clothing right here with some fur. Oh, that's awesome. You see the underpainting. Oh, that's awesome. The effect is great. You use the underpainting and you... That's an awesome use of underpainting right there to kind of give the impression that there's like, you know, these fur coats with tiny hair, like leather, or I don't know how it's called. L'amour est psyché by Bouguereau. We already seen Bouguereau, but I like the use of the underpainting. Here you can see it's just see all here. Just barely painting over to just recreate the shape of this kind of leather coat, to sort of recreate, you know, the tiny hairs that you have on the backside of these fur things. So that would be the front side, and that would be the back side, and it's kind of rough. It's kind of I kind of like this texture. Really inventive. Did Rembrandt use a red bull as a ground or in the painting? Did Rembrandt use a red bull? What's a red bull? Red bull? Red Bull? Did he have a Red Bull before painting? I doubt. Red Bull. What do you call Red Bull? Red clay pigment. So would you say this is like red ochre? Is it what you'd call red ochre? Trying to check if it's the same. I've never heard of this. Red clay pigment. Yeah, it's basically red ochre. Okay. It's another word for red ochre. I've never heard about this one. For this painting, no. It's something like maybe raw sienna or raw umber, something more yellowish. So it's more yellow or brown, like light brown, but not light brown red. Maybe though. It could be. No. Let me see. Maybe. It's always hard to see because the colors on top of the underpainting always change how you feel the underpainting. Like painting it with a cool color over the underpainting makes the underpainting feel warm. It could be red. Could be red or yellow. Red yellow is the answer, I think. Some sort of Venetian red. Yeah, Venetian red is kind of everything is kind of iron oxide, basically variations of iron oxide. So like red ochre, Venetian red, burnt sienna. It's all red oxide in a way. In various like combinations. It's all earth colors in any way. So, and you can find some that are more or less red, even from various manufacturers. So, yeah. Something warm, that's for sure. Something warm. Maybe burnt sienna as well. The underpainting looks redder than sienna. No, sienna is really red. Like that's, I don't know if you can see, but that's red. That's burnt sienna. So it's really orange. And this one feels more like yellow. It's always hard to say. The best is to look at the edges, generally. You'd want to look for some edges that were kept as they were. Or right there, I think they cropped the edges. So we won't see much. Because what makes it look reddish could be what was painted over as well. Raw sienna. Yeah, raw sienna is it's very very yellowish, so it could be that as well. It's kind of yellow orange. And all this is a great painting. Yeah, exactly. And this would be the conclusion of this journey through drapery and painting and clothing. So I hope you guys liked it. Next week there's not going to be a learning from the masters next Saturday, because I will be out of town, and but the week after that we'll have a new episode. So I don't know if we'll go with just one artist that you choose, or with another topic like this one, and follow various artists. I'll ask you guys what you prefer, and you'll tell me what you want to see. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you in the next episode. And take care. Bye.